You are alone in a house at night. A sound comes from the next room. Not a loud sound, not a crash, just a soft, ambiguous creak. The kind of sound a house makes when it settles, or the wind shifts, or the temperature drops. And before you have consciously processed what you heard, something in you has already decided. Someone is in there. Not something, someone. Your brain didn't ask you. It didn't wait for more information. It took incomplete sensory data and inserted an agent, a presence, an intention, a mind, into the silence before you could stop it. That reflex has a name. And it is the same reflex that built every religion in human history. We have spent centuries debating religion as theology, as culture, as philosophy, as politics. The question everyone keeps asking is whether gods are real. But there is a different question underneath that one, a quieter question. A question that changes everything regardless of how you answer the first one. Why did every human civilization, independently across every continent, separated by oceans and millennia and language, all arrive at the same answer? Not the same God, not the same story, not the same ritual, the same category. Invisible beings with intentions, agents you cannot see, minds operating behind the surface of the world. Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Amazon rainforest, the Arctic tundra, the islands of the Pacific. Every culture, every time period, every level of technological development, the same invisible watchers. That is not a theological coincidence. That is a pattern. And patterns in human behavior don't come from the sky. They come from inside the brain that was looking at it. In the 1990s, a cognitive anthropologist named Pascal Boyer began studying why religion appears universally across all human cultures. Not what religions believe, not whether they are right, but why the human mind produces them at all, and why it keeps producing the same basic shape regardless of geography, history, or cultural context. What he found had nothing to do with theology. It had everything to do with a specific piece of cognitive hardware your brain runs constantly, automatically, and without your permission. It is called the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device, HADD for short. The name is almost too clinical for what it actually does. Your brain contains a dedicated system for detecting agents, things with minds, intentions, and the ability to act. This system evolved because in a world full of predators, the cost of missing an agent was death. The cost of imagining one that wasn't there was mild embarrassment. So the brain overshot. Massively. It became hyperactive, trigger-happy, primed to find minds everywhere. In rustling leaves, in dark water, in clouds, in the faces of cliffs. Boyer's research, later expanded by cognitive scientists including Justin Barrett, showed that this same system, the one that hears footsteps in empty rooms, is the foundational cognitive mechanism behind the universal human tendency to create gods. Here is the first layer. Agency detection alone doesn't build religion. It just makes your brain insert minds into ambiguous situations. But humans have a second cognitive system that takes this further. It is called theory of mind, the ability to model what another being is thinking, feeling, and intending. You use it constantly. When someone frowns, you don't just see a frown. You infer a mental state behind the frown. You build a model of their inner experience. This system evolved for tracking other humans, for predicting behavior, for social navigation. But the brain does not restrict it to humans. It applies theory of mind to anything agency detection has already flagged as a potential mind. The rustling leaves become a presence. The presence gets intentions. The intentions get a history. The history gets a personality. And suddenly the forest has a spirit. Not because someone decided to invent one, because two cognitive systems that evolved for survival combined in a way nobody designed and produced something nobody planned. Here is the second layer. Gods are not just agents, they are a very specific kind of agent. Cognitive scientists call them minimally counterintuitive beings, or MCIs. The concept is precise. A being that violates just enough natural laws to be memorable and attention-grabbing, but retains enough human-like properties to be processed easily by social cognition. A God that is invisible but has opinions. That is immortal but gets angry. That is everywhere but pays attention to you specifically. Just counterintuitive enough to stick. Just human enough to understand. Research by Boyer and Barrett found that this specific profile, i.e. the MCI profile, is the most cognitively transmissible type of agent concept across cultures. In other words, gods went viral, not because they were true, not because priests promoted them, but because the human brain was already primed to receive exactly that shape of information. Now here's the pattern interrupt. Stop thinking about religion for a moment. Think about the last time you felt watched. Not by a person, by something. In a forest, in a dark room, at the edge of a lake at dusk. That feeling didn't come from theology, it came from HADD firing in an ambiguous environment. You felt what every human has felt for 300,000 years. And out of that feeling, repeated, shared, elaborated, passed down, came every altar, every temple, every prayer ever spoken into the dark. Here is the third layer, the one that lands differently. The cognitive systems that built religion, agency detection, theory of mind, MCI processing, are not ancient relics your modern brain has outgrown. They are running right now. You experience them every time you feel like a book fell off a shelf for a reason. Every time you sense a presence in an empty room. Every time you attribute intention to a universe that may have none. Your brain is not doing this because you are superstitious. It is doing this because you are human. And being human means carrying 300,000 years of hardware that was never designed for a world without predators. Trying to navigate a world that replaced the predators with silence. You have probably smiled at someone who knocks on wood. You have probably rolled your eyes at a horoscope. You have probably told yourself you don't believe in that kind of thing. But you have also at some point felt something watching you from the dark. You have spoken to someone who couldn't hear you. You have asked a universe that may not be listening for something you needed. Not because you decided to believe, not because someone taught you to, because HADD fired, because theory of mind reached for something to model, because your brain, running 300,000-year-old software in a 21st century silence, did exactly what it was built to do. It found a mind in the dark. Every human who ever lived has stood where you have stood, at the edge of something vast, ambiguous, and silent, and built something to look back. Pascal Boyer spent decades studying why humans make gods. His answer was not comforting and not dismissive. It was simply this. The brain that builds gods is the same brain that builds language, empathy, and the ability to understand what another person is feeling. The same hardware, the same systems. The capacity that let your ancestors model a predator's intentions in the dark is the capacity that lets you understand what someone means when they say they are fine, but their eyes say otherwise. You cannot separate the God-making from the human-making. They are the same mechanism. Which leaves a question I cannot resolve and have stopped trying to. If the impulse to find minds in the darkness is the same impulse that allows you to truly know another person, is the thing your brain builds in the silence a mistake? Or is it the most human thing it does?